All right, so before we begin, I would like to do a land acknowledgement. So as a settler on this land and on behalf of NEADS, I'd like to acknowledge the Indigenous peoples of all the lands that we're calling in from today. Our so-called Canada is based upon the ancestral and unceded territory of the Inuit, Métis, and First Nations people that call this land home. These unceded and unsurrendered lands were often taken through violent, non-consensual means, and colonial violence persists in our society today. We stand in solidarity with Indigenous peoples across Turtle Island as they fight for their rights, representation, and recognition. With many of us being settlers on this land, it's crucial that we recognize our positions within oppressive structures and our roles and responsibilities towards reconciliation. So land acknowledgements like these are only a very, very small part of the lifelong and constantly evolving journey we must all take as we strive to improve relationships between nations and to improve our own understandings of local Indigenous peoples and their cultures. So to learn more about the land you're on, a link to native-land.ca will be posted in the chat below. Again, it is only a starting point. Thank you.
So much, Carly. My name is Elizabeth Mohler. I use she, her, and L pronouns. I'm going to be the host of tonight's panel. We have three amazing panelists, and I'm not going to say too much about them because they're going to introduce themselves, but we have Ben, Sohini, and Chloe. I just want to kind of set a little teeny bit of context before we begin this evening that the reason we wanted to do a graduate panel is because the last 3 years have seen graduate education change like no other time. Many of us have had to move to remote learning, primarily unaffordable and inaccessible to many, then back to in-person learning, then to hybrid learning, then to remote learning. Much of that was done without the consultation and feedback of students. And a lot of that was done without the consultation specifically of students with disabilities and how specific software platforms and technologies and then mandates to return in person impact these students. We also are aware that food prices, rent prices, and prices for cost of living are going up, and that disproportionately impacts graduate students who get low stipends well below the poverty line. And many of us with disabilities have to navigate that on top of receiving Ontario Disability Support Program, and sometimes have to turn down stipends in order to keep receiving our ODSP benefits. So that's to set some context for tonight's discussion. Your host, me, I'm a third-year doctoral candidate in the Health and Rehabilitation Sciences program, occupational science field. I am located in London, Ontario. And my work looks at discourse around self-managed attendant care and how folks who use those services resist and negotiate discourses of care. So to kick us off, I'd like to ask all three of our panelists to share a little bit about their studies and how their education and disability has shaped their academic experiences. So I'm going to start with Ben, then move to Chloe, then to Sohini. So Ben, I'd like to kick it over to you. Just maybe a 2 to 3 minute, if you don't mind, introduction about yourself.
Of course. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. And thank you everybody for being here today. I'm so excited when I hear the intersection of being a student and the intersection of being a person living with a disability. So as Elizabeth alluded to, my name is Ben Akuoko. My pronouns are he and him. For those who have sight loss, I am a dark-skinned Black male, short hair, and even going through my journey of gaining my MSW, which I acquired just in September, and very excited about it for sure. One of my main focus in the course, which really focused on social work and health, was to look at that social determinants of health, as well as that intersection of race, religion, gender identity, sexual orientation, and to collaborate that into our practice as social workers. So really good experience. It was a 2-year program part-time and all online, even before COVID. So I look forward to letting you folks know about my experience as a person with partial sight within my course, and I will pass it to the next panelist.
Thank you so much, Ben. And I think it's interesting here to note that your program was online even before COVID. And what we learned, sort of that reckoning from COVID, was that we can do things online and it can work well. We've proven that here at NEADS, but it's nice to hear of a program that was based online even prior to the pandemic. So we'll move to Sohini and then come back to Chloe. So Sohini, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sohini Chatterjee. I'm a PhD candidate and one-year scholar in the Department of Gender, Sexuality and Women's Studies at Western. I did my undergrad and my master's in India, and I moved to Canada for my PhD. So that transition has been quite interesting for me as a neurodivergent graduate student. And for very many years, I did not have language for my neurodiversity. And I'm beginning to explore that while also navigating graduate school. So I'm excited to be on this panel and learn from you and yeah, talk about what it means to be a disabled and neurodivergent graduate student.
Thank you. And Chloe, I want to pass it over to you.
My name is Chloe. My pronoun are she and they. I am second year doctoral student at Western University in the Faculty of Education. Sorry. What? I'm a disabled student. I also have a serious accident in the fall that impeded the trajectory of my studies. So I have a lot of perspective to share. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone, for just helping us get to know you a little bit and hear a little bit about your background. I just want to kind of stop for a minute and reflect on accommodations, specifically around how your accommodations in graduate school might have been different than undergraduate education, and any challenge that you had navigating and obtaining those accommodations, specifically if you were requiring extra funding or if you needed requirements lengthened in your program. So I'm going to start with Ben, then move to Sohini, and then to Chloe, just to kind of shake things up a little bit. So Ben, over to you.
Of course, of course. Thank you once again, Elizabeth, and really great topic when it does come to accommodations, because actually in my academic journey, I remember beginning with my social service diploma and being a person with a little bit more vision. So I didn't use accommodation as much, and then doing my BSW and then using, for those who don't know, Zoom text, where I zoom into the screen, and then ending off with my master's where I'm just predominantly using JAWS. So definitely a journey for sure. And I found that when I did my master's of social work, I found that I was more in tune and knowledgeable what accommodations I needed. So I was more confident in asking for accommodations, and then knowing that sometimes accommodations outside the box. So for example, for people who do have sight loss, I remember the product IRA, which those who have sight loss are very familiar with, and asking the accessibility office for utilizing IRA, or even aspects such as Kurzweil. So the one thing I find that's just very important is, as Elizabeth said in the beginning, us as students, we are the professionals. We know what we need as students. So I feel that it's very important to kind of be unconventional when you do look for your accommodations, and just know that you know what you need coming out of this, especially in a vigorous program such as like a master's or a PhD for sure. So I'll pass it back to you, Elizabeth.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ben. I want to just sit here for a moment and explore a couple of things. For folks who may not be familiar, IRA is an application that connects a sighted agent trained in how to assist somebody with vision loss with an individual who has vision loss. It's really nice because you can connect to somebody live, and Kurzweil is a software where you can scan in a print book and it comes out electronically. I think what's really interesting here is to kind of think about non-conventional accommodations, like Ben said. And in graduate school, oftentimes the buffet of accommodations that's available at the undergrad. So a note taker, a tutor, extra time on an exam, textbooks and alternative formats. Well, those are great. They don't meet the needs of specialized programs. So in my program, I'm done my coursework. So I don't need a note taker. I don't need a tutor because I'm not taking courses. But something like funding to allow me to bring a support person to a conference or a learning event would be critical. Unfortunately, when it comes to graduate accommodations, these are, like Ben said, unconventional, and we have to really fight and push for those accommodations with our disability services office, and sometimes even with our departments. I remember just before I turn it to Sohini, when I started in my department, being asked to fill out the paperwork to be a teaching assistant. And one of the really interesting things about it is in order for us to get our funding, we need to TA. And so when I was filling out the paperwork, I was thinking, well, how do I get accommodations? And Accessible Education said, well, you're an employee, you go to Human Resources. And Human Resources said, no, you're a student, it's part of your funding, go to Accessible Ed. So I ended up actually drafting a letter to my department explaining what I thought I needed, the kinds of courses I could TA, the things that would be difficult, i.e. proctoring exams in a large room, marking Scantrons, and then having my department dean meet with me to talk about what kind of a fit we could come up with. And in the end, we actually did approach a couple of faculty members, and we asked if I would be able to TA in their course. And I was very fortunate to have somebody come forward. But that required a lot of disclosure and a lot of extra labor on my part. So I just wanted to sort of set that stage, as Ben talked about those non-conventional accommodations, and really think about the ways that as graduate students, we're taking on a lot of extra labor to showcase and unveil what accommodations we need. So Sohini, I'm going to pass it over to you next.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think that as I was mentioning, that I did not do my undergrad in Canada. So I remember a lot of wanting accommodations or demanding accommodations dependent on making disclosures, as you correctly pointed out, because there was no formal system through which we had to go. So in order for me to ask for extensions on an assignment, I had to make disclosures that could sort of figure me as an incompetent student or somebody who is inefficient. So making those dangerous disclosures we do it at great risk of being seen as unworthy of being part of an institution. And I also think if we take into account how academia is structured, essentially, we have to think about doing multiple things all at once, publishing, going to conferences, teaching, grading. And I think, how do we ask for accommodations when there's a public publish and perish policy in place? Whom do we ask accommodations from? And if we have a gap in our resume, we'll also be seen as folks who don't take academia seriously or are not serious academics. So I think we also need to take into account how capitalist the whole system is, and how capitalism makes us put up this front of being productive workers. And if we fail to perform that role, then we are figured as people who are not worthy of being included. So I think conversations about accommodations also need to go beyond what we find at universities immediately, but also we need to think about the larger structural issues of publishing and going to hiring committees and being judged by them on the basis of competence, which are neurotypical and non-disabled in nature.
Yeah, lots of really great points there. I mean, this hyper productivity and what does it mean to be productive? And I know one of the things that we're working on here in the Western community is kind of reshaping and re-envisioning what the admissions process looks like. Like, why do we have to have X publications if we're coming into a doc program? Or why do we have to have so many conferences per year under our belt to keep our SSHRC funding? SSHRC is a tri-council agency funding. And so I think you're right to really kind of unpack that and say, you know, who is that serving and what kind of students are we producing and reproducing by having these norms? So Chloe, I'll pass it over to you.
Think there were a lot of great points already said, but so I had a very different experience when I think about my undergraduate studies and my graduate studies. My supervisors in my master's and doctoral studies really encouraged me to slow down and to challenge the notion of productivity. They encourage me to think beyond conferences and publications and make sure that I'm caring for myself and that I don't think within the norm. I really think that is important as disabled students to not fixate on the milestone that we need to accomplish and just do our very best that we can. And I think it's very essential that you have a supervisor who is willing to advocate on your behalf as well.
Yeah, you've brought up so many amazing points. Milestones, and I can only speak to the program in which I'm enrolled at Western. Milestones are key, and my program, being a health program, is very competitive, and there are set times at which you need to meet these milestones. And I think you raise such an important point that disability or not, our lives all follow different trajectories. We might be living with a disability, we might be a caregiver, we might be a mature student juggling parenting and jobs. And the milestones, while they're there to guide us, they can be restrictive and they can cause problems. And to your point about a supervisor being supportive and advocating with you and when need be for you, I would encourage anybody thinking about graduate education to interview supervisors, perhaps not just thinking about whether there's a fit between the academic work you want to do and their line of work, but setting up a time to talk to them, to ask them those questions about, are you okay if milestones need to be slowed down or if milestones need to be broken up? And what would it look like to have accommodations in your lab? And what supports could you offer, if any, for me to go to a conference or to be a research assistant? Because those conversations will open up a whole lot of information to you about the type of working relationship that you're going to have and what support you're going to be able to have. And I do want to stress that supervisors are under pressure too. So if somebody says, I don't have funding for you to have extra support in the lab or extra support at a conference, it isn't that they may not want to, it's that they may be a young untenured faculty member who's trying their best to build their lab, or they may simply have too many students and not enough funding to go around. So I just want to stress that sometimes it's just a matter of the resources that the supervisor has, but not necessarily that they don't want to accommodate. But regardless, you need to know that information before you make those decisions. So Chloe, thank you so much. I really appreciate the comments on milestones, and something for me to remember as I'm in my third year trying to work through starting the dissertation. But I want to turn to crip time and a scholar, Ellen Samuels, who actually defines it as daily lived experience in light of having a disability, thanks to having an accommodation and self-advocacy. And I'm wondering if we could just all take a moment to reflect on what graduate school could look like if we slowed it down or modified it to be in crip time rather than the prescriptive, not flexible, rigid graduate education that many of our programs have today. So I'm going to start with Ben, then move to Sohini, and then to Chloe, just trying to give everybody a voice break and break up when people are speaking. So Ben, go ahead.
Yeah, of course, of course. And I love the term self-advocate for sure, because definitely this is what we're doing every day, even attending our programs. But definitely I find taking away from the rigid, traditional, mainstream post-secondary school, I find in incorporating it and slowing it down, it definitely will show more of people's strengths and take away that barrier of uh, kind of that traditional look on how academics are taught. So very important to like even having that idea of like testing so traditional. We're going to give you a certain time frame to do a test, but to take that away for people not to have those time constraints as well can be very big in actually looking at people's getting the content. So it is very important to, it would be a good way to kind of look and make things fair for students, even when it does come to assignments, and having that being a little bit lenient towards assignments. So I could see it really showing the strengths and even showing the creativity from the students that are attending the grad school and not having the constraints of that pressure of, okay, this is the traditional way in looking at completing graduate studies.
Yeah, so many good points. And, you know, one of the things that I think about with crip time and what would a crip time graduate education look like, I like what you said about assignments, because I think to me what it would look like is people being able to showcase their work in different methods and modalities. And this is something as a teaching assistant I try to do. Unfortunately, my power as a TA is quite limited, but does it have to be a 16-page paper, or could it be a podcast? Could it be a poster? Could it be a video essay? Could it be a piece of artwork? And I think there's so many different ways that we can show what we know. And especially if we're wanting to do arts-based methods, I think there's a lot of room for, like you say, that creativity and how we demonstrate our knowledge. And I think that feeds really nicely into this idea of it doesn't have to be prescriptive. So I will turn it to Sohini and then to Chloe.
I think working on crip time while being in graduate school is difficult, if not impossible, because we are only funded for 4 or 5 years. Most of us are funded for 4 years. And I feel in order to even have a shot at a TT job, for those who are thinking of applying, or for industry job, you have to build your CV so that you are competitive. Now, in order to be competitive, I've heard other students say this as well, other graduate students say this as well, that we do not have the luxury to take a day off. We are working weekends, we are working 7 days a week in order to make sure that we can put our best foot forward. Now, for many of us neurodivergent students, it's very hard to maintain that pace. Sometimes, and I've done this and I keep doing this, is that I'll prioritize work at the cost of self-care. I'll prioritize work at the cost of my health and my well-being. So it's, since we do not have the privilege to work on crib time, what happens is we often put our well-being at risk. And it's, our life is centered around work. So it's a privilege to be able to take that time off. And I know it's also a matter of agency and a matter of neurodivergent and disabled assertion to take that time, to demand that time for ourselves, and to speak truth to power and talk back to authority figures and institutions that we need to work on crib time because we need to do it for ourselves. And I think many are not in a position to do that, to make those assertions and to make those demands. But then again, we are also very creative. We know how to innovate, and I think many of us do it as a matter of justice. We work on crib time as a matter of justice, and cultivate a pace that seems good for our body minds, but it's difficult.
Wow, so much to unpack there. And I think, you know, I want to just circle back to funding. That's a huge issue. So it's, I mean, people with no disabilities are not finishing in 4 years, at least in my program. I had a seminar this morning, a doctoral seminar, and one of the individuals presenting said that she was going to take 6 years. So I'm not sure who's meeting these 4-year timelines, but not many folks I know. But I think, you know, what's really interesting is how, you're right, the program is set up for specific corporeal normative standards of body minds. And when we sort of problematize that, what we come up against is barriers because we're not fitting in the boxes. But then in truth and in reality, we're seeing that in today's world, a lot of people aren't fitting in those boxes because the student of 20 years ago, when these funding packages were designed, and I can speak to this as somebody who's quite involved with our student government here at Western, people aren't keeping up to those demands because things have changed in our world and we're needing to take on more and more demands to afford graduate education. So you've unpacked, both of you unpacked so many great points there. I'd like to turn it to Chloe for their thoughts.
Thank you. For me, crib time is essential. I don't think I would be where I am today without the notion of crib time. And I'm very privileged in the sense that my faculty is entertaining crib time for me, and not that I require more time in order to produce a similar amount of as work as my non-disabled colleagues. And as I mentioned earlier, I was in a serious accident in the fall, and it required me to take substantial time off, and my faculty was really accommodating and allowed me to complete my coursework as a base that was good for me. And I recognize that this is not typical, and it saddens me that there is no universal way of faculty members responding to disability and accommodation. It really a case by case basis.
I'm so thrilled to hear that you had the support that you needed during that difficult time. And it speaks to the need for faculty members who live without disabilities to be allies, and those who are disabled themselves to be able to mentor and support us. I think we all go through periods in our life where we need accommodations. A temporarily able-bodied is a term well known in the disability literature. And I think what Chloe's just shared really speaks to that, because we can become more or less disabled based on illness or accident, and we don't know when our circumstances are going to change. And the other thing I really heard that resonated for me in all of your stories was access intimacy. So this idea that somebody really gets what you need, and if they don't quite get it, they're willing to sit with you and listen and have those difficult conversations. And so that, boy, we're really painting this picture of what grad education in CRIP time could look like, and I'm starting to see a paper forming. But onward and upwards, thinking about barriers in grad education, I'm wondering if you'd be comfortable sharing what the biggest barrier you faced was or is, if you're still facing it, and how your post-secondary education's accessible education office could support you better to navigate that barrier. So Sohini, we're going to start with you, pop over to Ben, and then to Chloe, just to give everyone again those voice and breath breaks.
I think strict deadlines, I would say. Even though I should also admit that I am in a department where I found a lot of support and supportive mentors. And also I'm uniquely placed in a department where conversations on disability are had. But I also studied political science and international relations. And I know there are fields that are much more masculinist and probably do not take into account conversations that happen in different feminist spaces. So, but in order for me to challenge the ableism, I've had to make personal disclosures about my experiences of the complexities of my body mind, which I'm not comfortable doing at all times. So I think in order to create a system where we do not expect every academic worker, because graduate students are also academic workers because we work as TAs or lecturers. So to not create those neurotypical and non-disabled normative standards for all of us, and to have a uniform deadline without so much as a conversation around whether or not these deadlines are flexible. If we have that knowledge, then probably we do not have to make those disclosures that are uncomfortable, and we shouldn't have to make those in order to get what we deserve. So I also think about how we can really innovate and how we can really provide before students are made to divulge personal information about themselves. That's something I think about. And I also think about undergrads. I know our undergraduate students also have to go through a very complex system, which many are not aware of because they do not have the cultural capital, or maybe they're international students who are just figuring out the Canadian education system. So it's different for different people, different students. So I think having a disability culture in place, or having disability cultures and being acquainted with disability cultures is important. For that, I think every department should listen and hold space for disabled students. And I know it probably sounds more convenient to have workshops, but I think it's one way of because I know academics love conferences and workshops, so I think it's the best way for us to have those conversations in spaces where these conversations are not being had.
Yeah, so much to unpack. Forced disclosure is so difficult. And just before we turn it over to Ben, one of the things that I experienced myself and I learned in conversations with many other students is when we were permitted to learn remotely on Zoom, one of the positives is that people didn't always have to disclose because you just logged in and showed up and you weren't walking in with a visible marked difference. Sometimes you might have needed to disclose to a faculty member if you needed things in an alternative format, but it wasn't the visible forced disclosure that happens for many of us when we walk into a physical classroom. So thank you, Sohini. And Ben, I'll pass it to you.
Of course, of course. And yeah, I got a couple of barriers that I went through going through grad school, and actually similar to what Sohini was making mention when it kind of comes to that lack of space when it comes to students with disabilities. And I would say even that safe place to kind of consult on how to navigate through the program for sure. So that was definitely something where having the similar experiences and having that opportunity to reach out to other grad students who live with a disability. And it's interesting because you were just making mention, Elizabeth, about disclosure as well. And just having that opportunity for people to disclose and getting to know other students, as I made mention, in similar circumstances. And something that was another barrier was the fact that although it was a benefit to be doing school online and having that opportunity to work from Zoom at home, it was still a little bit of a hindrance because you had to make sure that your equipment worked. You, for those who are probably lower on the economic scale, having working internet, even for myself, sometimes the internet gapping out during any classes. So just having that online typical navigation as a barrier for sure. And then I have a couple more, but I'm just going to highlight upon one more, is the fact that it's that when working with the accessibility office, that one glove fits all. And definitely that was something that I was exposed to when I did connect with the accessibility office, where as a person who has low vision, you could just use this. And going to my first few points when I was making mention of accommodation, you could just use this. This is okay with you. But having that one glove fits all, where although people may live with the same disability, knowing that it's certain equipment and uniqueness to that individual in how they work within grad school. So as I made mention, it's a couple more barriers, but I I would like to give time for sure to others for sure. So I'll pass it back to you, Elizabeth.
Thank you so much. And something you said really resonated. Well, everything you said resonated with me, but there was one point in particular that had a light bulb moment for me. And that was when you said the one glove fits all. And I was thinking about how a lot of times when we talk about universal design for learning, people mistake that to be like a one size fits all approach. And it's not. It's about flexibility and multiple means of engagement and multiple means of expression and participation. But you're right. I think in the places where we expect that flexible, nimble thinking, we're not getting it. And it really hit home for me. And what a great saying, this glove of one size fits all. And I love the imagery there. So Chloe, I'd like to pass it to you.
I think one of my biggest area is my internalized implicit. I am confronted with so much internalized, not only implicit, but internalized self-perceptions, which in result impacts my productivity. As mentioned before, I cannot achieve the same my own struggles as my peers, and that really impacts my perception if classical is the right space for me. I know that I belong in classical, but it's still challenging. Also, sorry, I forgot my train of
That's
thought.
okay. This is all part of sites of care and radical love. So there's no judgment. We'll let you sort of sit with your thoughts. And if in the next question you want to incorporate those back in, you're welcome to, or you can pop them in the chat. But I wondered about, this research that shows, and we've done studies here at NEADS, and certainly the Center Institute for Work and Health has done studies that really look at how people with disabilities don't finish their degree. They drop out due to the barriers that we've been discussing this evening. And I'm wondering if we have thoughts on how we can make post-secondary institutions sites of radical love and care. So we're going to go Sohini, Ben, Chloe, just again to give everybody those voice and breath breaks. So Sohini, go ahead.
I love this question, Elizabeth.
I thought you might.
And I also and I don't want to sound so pessimistic, but maybe I am a little bit, considering neoliberal universities, how difficult it is to inculcate caring communities and to have radical love, because we are at the end of the day always competing with each other, and we can sense that in conversations, in graduate spaces. But I think it is possible if we are conscious and if we are self-consciously cultivating those spaces of radical love and prioritizing collaboration over competition. It's impossible for competition to just go away, but it is very possible for us to still have and build those spaces and hold space for collaborative conversations, for sites of care where we can come together and also think about strategies of navigating graduate school as disabled and or neurodivergent graduate students. We can also support each other, navigating systems and the structural violence that we often come up against. So I think it is very possible if there is willingness, and if we create that ethic of love and community, and if we are invested in creating anti-capitalist relationalities, if that makes sense, even though I know we are embedded in structures that make it so difficult. But as educators and as people who write and think about theories and stay with theories, and think about world making and hope, I think it's possible, and it happens in the everyday.
Yeah, really such important points. And just if people are interested in reading around ethic of care and ethic of love, Eva Federkite does some great work around that, and it's worth a read. And I just want to apologize. There's a very noisy crow or seagull right outside my hotel room window. So I apologize if during Sohini's very articulate points, you were hearing some noise. That's what that was. Ben, I will turn it over to you.
Of course, thank you, Elizabeth. And maybe we should show that crow some radical love, for sure.
I think we should.
Of course. So definitely, Sohini, you hit the nail on the head. Like I'm looking back at my points, but definitely providing those higher standards for sure for persons with disabilities, because, and I guess this is more almost a societal construct more than even in academia, where it's that mindset of, okay, you're a person living with a disability, you made it this far into grad school, good for you. Even if you can't succeed in grad school, like it's okay, you made it, right? I truly believe that even mentorship and us who are going through grad school, who are navigating, the people who have come before us, to bring those high standards that it's like you made it here, you deserve to be here. And I know it's another question about imposter syndrome I think maybe asked today, but just helping extinguish that mindset of the fact that it's good enough, right? And to, as Sohini was even making mention, having these groups and having this community to express that, yeah, you do belong here. And it's so important that even as me as a MSW who finished and multiple PhDs out there, that we kind of give back and we kind of have that trail that, okay, like this is how grad school is. We have high standards, and in a way, like I know we were talking about radical love, and kind of give that tough love. Don't give up. You don't think because you have a disability you got this far, it's good enough, right? So I'm going to pass it back to you, Elizabeth.
Thank you so much. And I just want to pause. Imposter syndrome is a feeling with which most graduate students are very familiar. And I think when we have a disability and we're asking for things to be slowed down, for crit time to be acknowledged, for an accommodation, for somebody to sit with us and maybe make sure our slides are formatted correctly, we feel a sense of impostership or imposter syndrome because we're asking for help, and heaven forbid we do that in grad school. So I think imposter syndrome, like you said, Ben, it's very real when you have a disability and you're navigating academia. I'm going to pass it over to Chloe, and then what I'm going to propose after Chloe's done sharing their thoughts is that we use our last 10 minutes to open it up, because this isn't just about us talking at you. We want to hear from you. And I think perhaps what I'll propose after Chloe's done is that we'll stop the recording for the open discussion so people can feel like they're in a safe space to share things and ask questions that they may not wish recorded. So Chloe, over to you.
I don't want to create a generalization, but in my experience, there is a lack of disabled narrative in close context, and I don't feel that I'm represented in what I'm learning. I learn about all various communities and different folks, but in terms of disabled folks, it's usually me who needs to bring that context within class discussions and within seminar presentations. So I feel if we want to create spaces of radical love and radical care, we need to bring in those narratives from our communities that are often absent from the conversations and from the tables.
Yeah, I think that's a really lovely way to just end this part. And I think it always is a question I challenge my students when I TA the childhood and disability course is who's in the space, who's not in the space, and who should be in the space. So when we think about academe and we look around or listen around our rooms, physical or virtual, and we're not hearing certain perspectives or voices, or we're not seeing certain communities there sharing their story, I think that's really important to ask ourselves and to critically reflect on and to get our students to think about. So thank you so much.